Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors. The reason there's an echo with my voice is I'm out in the garage. When I first unpack things that arrive, I like to leave them out here for a few minutes because a few years ago I had a Kenwood receiver. It arrived, it was somewhere in January, and I unpacked it, set it here, went in, had lunch, worked on a couple things. And I came out and I plugged in my headphones, and before I even turned it on, there's like 120 hertz coming from it. I'm just like, oh, but it's not even on. So I unplugged it. I'm like, oh great. So I'm looking around, I turned it over a bit, and then I saw there's some kind of a wasp in there, like a yellow jacket. It had been dormant, I guess, in the cold weather. Maybe it crawled in a hole somewhere, and it woke up because I had the heat on in the garage. It's like, okay. So I actually gave it a little shot of Raid, because if I get bit by one of those things, it's very bad for me. I react very badly to them. So anyway, and the restoration turned out good. No more hums or buzzes, but that's why I leave them out here just in case there's something like a spider that comes out of it. This one here was on eBay and it looked a little sad. You can see it's missing its left ear here. It has the right one. These little plastic inserts that finish off the faceplate. And I actually have one here. This one, it is for that side, so that'll be alright. They were kind of glued in with some kind of glue, but they often got knocked out or loose. I bought more of these missing one or both than having both. The last one I had, it was missing the right one, and I actually had them 3D printed. Somebody did a scan of one for me and then had them printed and made a pair, so then I had this one left over, which is perfect for this one. Kind of what made me want to buy it. But the other thing is I have an idea for a system. These here are actually, they're just a revised KA-2000. They're on the horizontal, whereas the KA-2000 was more like smaller faceplate, longer. There are two versions of this one. This is the earlier version, just the 2002. It has the black nozzle, the silver ring, the orange power switch. What's kind of cool about this one is on the back it has switchable pre-out and pre-in. And later versions, I don't know if I can turn this without knocking the cord out, but it's just a switch and some jacks. Later ones, they eliminate that feature. This was about the most entry-level, basic integrated amp you could get in the early 70s that had that feature. And it's very similar in circuitry especially, to like a Sansui 222. Which is an early one. It's their small form factor, kind of the same color metal case. It had the rocker switches. This has the push button ones. These were made in 71. And it's very similar circuitry, but it's all on one board with some point to point. So I actually turned it on before, and although the bulb is out, the volume control is a little scratchy, but I can hear it hiss from the phono. Yep. It is amplifying, and there's no hum from the power supply. That control's a little bit noisy, the bass and treble a little bit noisy, source switch is a little bit wonky. So it's actually all there and working, although it was sold as dead. Maybe because the light didn't come on. It's possible. I'm just going to unplug that so you can then see what the back looks like. So there it is. It's a Magnasonic Canada. So that was the distributor. They put their faceplate on it. And there it is, normal separate. The pre-in, pre-out jacks. Don't look like they've ever been used. A little dusty. Screws and everything, not much corrosion on anything on this one. Let's just look at the bottom. Has the CSA label, Canadian Standards Association. Little access hatch. It's actually a very clean but dusty unit, which is kind of cool. I'm kind of curious how dusty it is inside. It looks a bit dusty. Well, I'll take the screws out. I'm going to tell you about the idea I have for a system. I have a Dynaco Stereo 120, which has been sitting here for a few months. It's had some updating. It's got new filter caps, coupling caps in it. It needs a little bit of noise abatement. But it's been sitting there. The lid needs to be repainted, needs a little cleaning up. I'm going to put the soft start feature on it. And then I thought, this uses a preamp, put in preamp mode. Driving that would make a really nice system with a bit of wump. And this has a very quiet 4 transistor phono preamp. That's one neat thing about them. You can have this hooked up to a phone as long as the grounding is good. You can turn the volume way up and they're quiet. Unfortunately, this one right now sounds like a cement mixer when you turn the volume up, because I bet you it has some very noisy C458 transistors in it. But that's all stuff we've done before. And this is very reasonable. I got it here for about $130 with shipping. With the idea, I bought it because I felt sorry for it, to be honest. And the pricing was right. These Kenwoods of this series, people are always interested in buying them, especially restored, because they just have a nice reputation. There's the lid. Yeah, this one is pretty dusty inside. I'm going to take it on the back deck and blow it out. So it actually has, if you look at the part numbers, the same rating transformer as a KA-2500 or the TK-250, which is kind of interesting. So it has just a little bit more current on the transformer. This one here has, yeah, all 4 outputs like that. Some of these have the metal transistors, some have the plastic ones. This has the plastic ones. Yep, and look, I don't know if you can see this. I'll flip it up. I don't know if it's in your scope of vision, but so this board is pretty obvious. At this end is the phono stage, tone control preamp. There's a voltage regulator transistor in there. Then we get into the driver stage, the pre-driver. It's all silicon. Drives these here, the biasing networks down here. So it's all very straightforward. But I can see those wedge-shaped C458s in the first stage of the phono preamp. That's why it's so noisy. Oh, look at that. There's a couple here. This is the buffer amp between the tone controls and this next stage. Bias pots don't look like they've ever even been turned. Though it's a bit noisy. I usually find with this, if you change the C458 and recap it, it'll be amazingly quiet. A lot of these caps might actually test good and they might actually sound good. You never know. Like, I have run them unrestored and found that the biggest sacrifice you make in not restoring it is the phono stage is always noisier with the old caps and transistors. These are all Elmas. It's like the gray Elmas might be the greatest caps ever made for longevity. Think about this. This is over 50. That's quite a thing. This here, does it have, some have 1,000 microfarad. This one's a 50 volt 2200, so that's what most of them have. That's the main filter. And it runs about 48 or 49 volts. Sometimes if the AC line's a little higher, closer to 50, which is kind of a strain on it, but it's not, there's a little crack in the vent right there. So, neat thing about this one is, everything's obvious, everything you can get at it. They're not hard to go through. Do that. Cord actually looks good. No kitty chews on it. A little dirty, but a lot of these have bad power switches. And the power switch actually has two switches, and one is the double pole, double throw. One side is the AC, and the other side is a muting circuit located right here. And the way the muting circuit works is it turns off power to one stage of the preamp. Anyway, I'm gonna restore this. We're not gonna do many videos on the restoration because I've done this model before. And then I'm going to jump into the stereo 120, which I've done before. So once this is up and running, I'll do a video, and one of them together. I expect some greatness here. Thanks for watching and listening.